Rage twisted Karen's features as she flipped over the garden bench with a thunderous crash. But the instant the wood cracked, a sickening realization swept across her face. This wasn't just some flimsy yard decor. It was a weathered memorial, a shrine to a lost loved one. And she had desecrated it in a fit of blind fury. Now, the consequences of her actions were about to catch up with her in the most terrifying way. It had started as a simple neighborly dispute, the kind that flared up between suburban homeowners from time to time. I had recently installed a new garden bench near the property line, just a few feet onto my side. It was a beautiful piece, hand-carved from rich oak, with delicate floral inlays that caught the sunlight in a mesmerizing display. But my neighbor Karen, with her obsessive-compulsive need for perfect symmetry, couldn't stand the slight asymmetry it created along the fence. She began making passive-aggressive comments whenever she saw me outside, subtly hinting that the bench needed to be moved. I tried reasoning with her, explaining that it was a memorial for my late wife, a place for me to reflect and find peace. But Karen was having none of it. "It's an eyesore, and it's encroaching on my property," she spat one afternoon, nostrils flaring. "I want it gone, and I mean yesterday." I held up my hands, trying to de-escalate the situation. "Karen, please. This bench means everything to me. Can't we find some way to compromise?" But compromise was the furthest thing from her mind. With a snarl, she turned and stormed back to her own house, slamming the door behind her. I sighed, shaking my head. Experience had taught me that Karen rarely let things go. This was only the beginning. True to form, the very next day I awoke to the sound of splintering wood. Rushing outside, I watched in horror as Karen violently flipped the bench over, her face twisted in an ugly mask of rage. The intricate carvings I had so lovingly crafted were shattered, the beautiful oak now reduced to candling. And then, just as quickly as her fit of destruction had begun, it ended. Karen froze, the color draining from her face as she stared down at the ruins. Realization dawned in her eyes, followed by sheer terror. "Oh my God," she whispered, her voice barely audible. This wasn't just a bench. The air hung thick with tension as Karen stared in horror at the splintered remains of the bench. Her transgression had finally dawned on her, and the realization was written all over her face. "Oh my God," she whispered, her voice trembling. This wasn't just a bench." I clenched my fists, fury boiling inside me. No, it wasn't Karen. It was a memorial, a place for me to honor my late wife's memory. Karen's eyes went wide, her mouth opening and closing as she struggled to find the right words. I had no idea. I thought it was just some eyesore you put up to annoy me." "Annoy you?" I scoffed, taking a step closer. "Do you have any idea how much that bench meant to me? How much time and care I put into crafting it?" I gestured to the shattered pieces. "And now it's gone. Everything is gone." Karen began to back away, her hands raised in a pleading gesture. "I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I was just so frustrated, and Save it," I snapped, cutting her off. "Your sorries don't bring my wife back. They don't fix what you've done." Tears sprang to Karen's eyes, and she shook her head frantically. "Please, I don't know what to say. I never meant to. It's a little late for that, don't you think?" I took another step forward, my voice dripping with venom. "You knew how much that bench meant to me, and you destroyed it anyway. Out of petty spite and selfishness." Karen flinched, her eyes darting around nervously. I'll pay to have it replaced. I'll do anything, just please." She trailed off, her voice cracking with emotion. I regarded her for a long moment, the anger simmering beneath the surface. "Anything, huh?" A dark thought began to take root in my mind. "All right, Karen. I'll tell you what you can do." Karen stared at me, her eyes pleading. "Please, just tell me what I can do to make this right. I'll do anything. I swear. I regarded her for a long moment, the anger simmering beneath the surface. Anything, huh? A dark thought began to take root in my mind. All right, Karen. I'll tell you what you can do. I took a step closer, my voice low and menacing. You're going to help me rebuild the bench. Exactly as it was before. Every intricate carving, every painstaking detail. And you're going to do it with your own 2 hands. Karen's eyes widened in alarm. Do what? But I don't know the first thing about woodworking. Then you better learn, and fast, I growled. Because until that bench is restored, you're not going anywhere. But I have a job, a life. Karen protested, her voice rising in panic. I can't just drop everything too. That's not my problem. I cut her off, my gaze unwavering. You destroyed something that was priceless to me. Now you're going to put it back together, piece by piece, until it's exactly as it was before. Karen opened and closed her mouth, struggling to find the words. Finally, she let out a defeated sigh. All right, fine. I'll do it. But how am I supposed to even start? A humorless smile tugged at the corners of my lips. That's simple. You're going to learn from the best. I turned and headed for my garage, calling over my shoulder, Come on, Karen. Time to get to work. As she reluctantly followed behind me, I couldn't help but feel a sense of grim satisfaction. Karen had brought this upon herself. Her petty cruelty and disregard for my grief had led her to this point. Now, she would have to face the consequences of her actions, one painstaking step at a time. The journey ahead wouldn't be easy for either of us. But as I retrieved my well-worn tools and prepared to teach Karen the intricate art of woodworking, I knew that justice would be served. One way or another, she would understand the true value of what she had destroyed. The air in my garage was thick with tension as Karen stood beside me, her eyes nervously darting from one tool to the next. I could practically feel the fear radiating off of her, and part of me took a twisted satisfaction in her discomfort. All right, Karen, I said, picking up a sturdy-looking chisel. We're going to start with the most intricate part, the floral inlays on the bench. Karen's brow furrowed in confusion. Inlays? But I thought we were just going to rebuild the whole thing from scratch. I shook my head, already setting to work. No, that won't do. The bench has to be an exact replica, down to the last detail. That's the only way to make this right. But I don't know the first thing about woodworking. Karen protested, her voice rising in panic. How am I supposed to? You'll learn, I interrupted, fixing her with a stern gaze. And you'll learn quickly, because you're not leaving this garage until the job is done. Karen opened her mouth, then closed it again, understanding dawning on her face. Reluctantly, she stepped closer, watching as I began to carefully chisel away at the wood. See this, I murmured, guiding her hand to the delicate inlay. You have to be precise, applying just the right amount of pressure. Too much, and you'll split the wood. Too little, and the design won't come through. Karen nodded slowly, her fingers trembling as she traced the pattern. I think I get it. Good, I said, handing her the chisel. Now you try. For the next several hours, we worked in tense silence, the only sounds the rhythmic tapping of the chisel and the occasional grunt of frustration from Karen. I watched her carefully, offering occasional guidance and corrections, but for the most part, I let her figure it out on her own. And as the intricate floral motifs slowly took shape under her struggling hands, I couldn't help but feel a sense of grim satisfaction. Karen was learning, slowly but surely, the value of what she had so carelessly destroyed. The process was painful, both physically and emotionally, but it was a necessary penance. By the time the sun began to set, the first section of the bench was nearly complete. Karen's fingers were raw and blistered, her face etched with exhaustion, but there was a newfound determination in her eyes. I think I'm getting the hang of this, she murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. I nodded, a small smile tugging at the corners of my lips. Good, because we've got a lot more work to do. The days turned into weeks as Karen and I labored side by side in my garage, painstakingly reconstructing the shattered garden bench. Her initial resistance had gradually given way to a fierce determination, fueled by a growing understanding of the depth of her transgression. Every carve of the chisel, every smooth stroke of the sandpaper, served as a stark reminder of the care and craftsmanship that had gone into the original. Karen's hands, once so deft at tearing things down, now struggled to rebuild with the same level of precision and attention to detail. It was a humbling process for her, I could tell. The arrogance and condescension that had once colored her interactions with me had all but vanished, replaced by a humility born of hard-earned lessons. She no longer interrupted or argued, instead listening intently as I guided her through each intricate step. "You see this?" I would murmur, running my calloused fingers over the delicate floral inlays. "This was the part your rage destroyed. But now, you're the one bringing it back to life." Karen would nod, her brow furrowed in concentration, her movements growing steadier with each passing day. It was a slow, painstaking journey, but I could see the transformation taking place within her. And as the bench began to take shape once more, something else began to shift between us as well. The intense animosity that had once consumed our interactions gave way to a reluctant camaraderie, forged in the crucible of our shared labor. There were still moments of tension, to be sure. Karen would sometimes grow frustrated, her hands shaking as she struggled to master a new technique. And I, in turn, would have to fight the urge to snap at her, to remind her of the gravity of her initial transgression. But in those moments, something remarkable would happen. Karen would take a deep breath, pause, and try again with renewed focus. And I, in turn, would find myself offering gentle encouragement, guiding her through the challenge with a patience I hadn't known I possessed. It was a slow, halting process, to be sure. But as the weeks wore on, I began to see glimpses of a different Karen, one who was humbled, contrite, and genuinely committed to making amends. And with each passing day, the weight of my own grief seemed to lighten, ever so slightly. Perhaps, in the end, this arduous journey would prove to be a path to healing for us both. As the weeks turned into months, the garden bench began to take shape once more under our combined efforts. Karen's initial clumsiness had given way to a growing confidence and skill, her hands moving with a careful precision that belied the hard-won lessons of our arduous work. I watched her with a mixture of grudging respect and lingering resentment. Part of me still bristled at the memory of her callous destruction, the way she had so recklessly disregarded the profound meaning the bench held for me. But another part, the part that had slowly begun to thaw in the face of her genuine remorse, couldn't help but acknowledge the transformation taking place before my eyes. "You know," I murmured one day as we sanded the freshly carved wood, "I never thought you'd stick with this. But you've proven me wrong." Karen paused, her brow furrowing slightly. "I don't have much choice, do I?" she replied, her voice tinged with a hint of bitterness. "Not after what I did." I nodded, unable to deny the truth in her words. "That's true. But even so, you could have given up a long time ago." I studied her for a moment, then added, "Instead, you've shown a level of dedication I wouldn't have expected." Karen let out a soft sigh, her gaze fixed on the bench. "I don't have the right to expect forgiveness, not after what I did. But," she paused, her fingers tracing the delicate floral inlays, "I want to make this right. I owe it to you, and to your wife's memory." The words hung in the air, heavy with the weight of unspoken emotions. I felt a familiar pang in my chest at the mention of my late wife, the grief that had once threatened to consume me now tempered by the slow march of time. "She would have appreciated that," I murmured, my voice barely above a whisper. "She always believed in second chances, even when they weren't deserved." Karen looked up then, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "I'm so sorry," she whispered, her voice trembling. I know that's not enough, but I am. For everything. I held her gaze for a long moment, then nodded slowly. I know, Karen. I know. And in that moment, I realized that the path to healing, for both of us, might just be found in the careful restoration of this weathered memorial, a testament to the power of forgiveness and the transformative potential of redemption. As the final touches were put in place, the once shattered garden bench stood before us, a testament to the power of perseverance and the transformative potential of redemption. Karen's calloused hands, once the instruments of its destruction, had become the tools of its restoration, a physical embodiment of the journey she had undertaken. I ran my fingers over the smooth, polished surface, marveling at the attention to detail. Every intricate carving, every delicate inlay, had been painstakingly recreated with a level of precision that rivaled the original. It was as if the bench had never been broken at all. It's perfect, Karen breathed, her voice thick with emotion. I don't know how you did it, but it's exactly how it was before. I nodded, a small smile tugging at the corners of my lips. That was the whole point, Karen. To make it exactly as it was, a shrine to my wife's memory, untouched by the ravages of time or the careless actions of those who couldn't understand its significance. Karen swallowed hard, her gaze dropping to the ground. I know, and I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for what I did. I was selfish and thoughtless, and I destroyed something that was precious to you. She paused, her shoulders trembling slightly. But I'm grateful that you gave me the chance to make it right. I studied her for a long moment, seeing the genuine remorse etched into her features. Gone was the arrogant, unyielding neighbor I had once known. In her place stood a humbled, contrite woman, her pride and ego stripped away by the arduous journey of restoration. You know, I began, my voice soft. When this all started, I couldn't have imagined that we'd end up here. I was so consumed by anger and grief that I couldn't see beyond my own pain. Karen nodded, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. I can't blame you for that. I deserved every bit of your rage and more. Maybe, I conceded. But something changed along the way, didn't it? You could have given up, could have walked away at any point. But you didn't. I couldn't, Karen murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. Not after what I'd done. I had to make it right, no matter how hard it was. I reached out, placing a hand on her shoulder. And that's what makes all the difference, Karen. You found the strength to face the consequences of your actions, to humble yourself, and do the hard work of redemption. I paused, giving her a genuine smile. And for that, I forgive you. Karen's eyes widened in surprise, and for a moment, she was rendered speechless. Then, the tears she had been holding back spilled down her cheeks, a mix of relief, gratitude, and the fading echoes of shame. I don't know what to say, she whispered, her voice trembling. After everything I've done, She shook her head, as if unable to fully process the weight of my words. I gave her shoulder a gentle squeeze, understanding dawning in my own heart. You've earned it, Karen. Through your dedication, your humility, and your willingness to make amends, you've shown me that you're truly sorry. She nodded, wiping at her tears with the back of her hand. I really am. This process it's been the hardest thing I've ever done, but it's also been the most important. Karen turned to face me, her gaze steady and sincere. Thank you for giving me this chance. I know I didn't deserve it, but I'm grateful beyond words. I smiled, the weight on my heart feeling a little lighter. You're welcome, Karen. And thank you for honoring my wife's memory in this way. I gestured to the restored bench, its rich oak gleaming in the afternoon sunlight. She would be proud to see what we've accomplished together. Karen nodded, a wistful smile playing on her lips. I hope so. I may not have known her, but I feel like I've come to understand a little of who she was, a person worthy of such a beautiful memorial. We stood in companionable silence for a moment, the tension that had once defined our relationship now replaced by a sense of mutual understanding and respect. As I turned to head back inside, I paused, glancing over my shoulder at Karen. "You know, I think this garden bench deserves a special place of honor. What do you say we move it a bit closer to the house?" Karen's eyes widened, and a look of genuine delight crossed her features. "I'd like that very much," she replied, her voice soft but sincere. Side by side, we carefully lifted the bench and carried it to its new location, where it would stand as a testament to the power of forgiveness, redemption, and the unexpected bonds that can form even in the midst of the most bitter of conflicts.